Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Nangle. I am a fourth year English education student at Westchester University, and I'm also serving as one of the Office of Student Leadership and Involvement's leadership consultants this year. And me and a few of my peers got together and created this little boot camp kind of thing to just talk about leadership and student organizations during a virtual semester. Obviously, we've seen a lot of changes, and one of those has been within our executive boards. And we wanted to talk a little bit about effective executive board and effective executive board communication. Um, you may see these two other lovely LCs in our subsequent, or maybe you watched them before, videos, but Dunya Markovic and Michaela Carlesis are also doing videos. So a few key questions for today. I'm going to ask you to do a little bit of an opening activity by yourself. I know that we're not in a meeting together, but I still ask. Um, and then focus on why is the executive board important? What are we doing here? Moving on, we'll talk about how do we create meaningful communication in executive boards? What do we do if there's a conflict inside an executive board? And where do we go from here? Uh, Obviously, none of us pictured doing our executive boards this way. I picture it like this. It now looks like this. But we're here and this is what we have to do. And we can say that we're going to keep pushing it until we're back in person, but unfortunately, time keeps pushing us back into virtual spaces to have these very important discussions. This is what we call a blob tree. So obviously, every blob is labeled with a number. And I find this a really nice tool to be able to help us kind of visualize our experiences or our emotions in a way that we can help other people understand. So I just ask you to take a few minutes, pause this video because I'm going to keep going, but really think about how you feel about your last semester. Or if you're a newly appointed executive board member, how you feel about executive boards that you feel in the past or how you feel stepping onto the board. Because I think the first thing that we need to do is really analyze where we are before we can figure out where we're going. So take a few minutes right now, pick a blob, write a little bit about it, and I'm going to keep going. The role of the executive board has greatly shifted. I think that anyone who's on the executive board has felt this. We're no longer seeing our peers, our fellow leaders once a week, maybe bi-weekly, to discuss events or to plan things that we can do in person because we can't be in person. But just because the executive board role has shifted doesn't mean that it's any less important. So I want to talk about how to stay in touch with your executive board and the most effective ways to stay in touch virtually. Um, the first one I want to talk about, and maybe it sounds like the most obvious, is to have virtual meetings. But I think we can get stuck in this rut a lot of the times of just using textual communication with our executive boards to get things done. But really, if you do that, you're going to miss this absence of humanity. Having virtual meetings allows you to see your team face to face, remember why you're there, maybe have a little bit of fun, hopefully. Um, and I feel like it also allows us to have that brainstorming component that we miss when we're so far away. It's difficult in a text to have ideas go back and forth until you come up with something perfect with your team. And so having a Zoom meeting, a Skype, a FaceTime really allows you to do that. Additionally, there is use for text-based platforms. Send reminders, have a group chat with your whole executive board, committees, whatever works. Slack and Discords work significantly better for larger organizations because they allow for more organization within a group chat, while GroupMe is more effective for maybe a smaller organization. And you can use like the events feature and the polling feature. But that doesn't allow for specific like tagging and labeling and that kind of thing. Another part of it, while in your meeting, try to take detailed and easy to access minutes, both for your executive board and for the greater body of your organization. It's very easy to close out of the Zoom window and have things move straight along as if they didn't ever happen and you forget about your responsibilities the second that you close that window. It's happened to me. It's happened to me literally yesterday. Um, And so making sure that you're having your secretary take those detailed meeting minutes, even if you want to sanitize the ones that you're sending out to the General Assembly so that you're not like throwing any members under the bus or talking about plans that are supposed to be a surprise. Making sure that you have record of what you're doing, who's supposed to be doing what, due dates, all that jazz. It just makes life so much easier and so much less confusing. Finally, if you set up regular meeting times, it's going to be so much easier to get your work done. Make Sundays at 2 p.m. your time with your executive board, and no one has an excuse to really miss it because everyone knows to schedule around Tuesday at 2 or Sunday at 2 p.m., whatever I said. And this just makes it more consistent. It makes it more practiced. And also it adds a little bit of structure to these virtual days that can feel so wobbly and as if there's no actual structure going on. But all that is kind of boring. What should we be doing? What should we be emphasizing and saying during this virtual semester? So outside of just like, how do we do this? So here's the what section. Community is just as important in an executive board as it is in a general assembly. So we take all this time as student leaders to build up community within our larger body of an organization. We want to make sure that everyone's having fun, that everyone's friends, that you're learning. Whatever the mission of your organization is, you want to make sure that it is a set community and that people feel comfortable there and that they feel like they can speak their mind, etc. And truly, the same is true for an exec board. Yeah, true twice there. So what to communicate virtually? Personally, I think it's important to have officers give weekly reports, specifically in a larger organization. If the fundraising chair just put on this huge event and the recruitment chair just sent out a whole bunch of flyers and neither of them know that that's going on, there can be a severe disconnect between what is actually happening in the organization. It's possible that the treasurer knows some things, that the secretary knows some things, and if they're not reporting as many times as you meet, that information is also going to get lost. And, we'll touch on this a little bit more in our conflict section, but that miscommunication is really not helpful or healthy inside of an executive board that's supposed to be so tight. But outside of a more formal thing, I think that it's important to have more personal time in your executive boards as well. Obviously, don't spend the same amount of time as your business doing personal things, but having a high and low moment, just having each one go around and say something good and something that wasn't so good happened that week can allow for so much more personal connection that just brings a side of humanity to it that is often missing in these virtual settings. You could also just do one good thing and have someone go around and say that they finished their essay that they've been working on, or they made themselves cookies this week. And it just brings a positive, homey vibe to your executive board that is very easy to let slip by in this virtual setting. On a similar end, make sure that you are celebrating people. If I'm going to use the fundraising chair again, if the fundraising chair raises $200 at their event and they had a whole bunch of help from the student body of your organization, make sure that you're saying that both publicly and in the executive board, making sure that people know that their work matters, making sure that people actually feel helpful and feel heard and feel necessary inside of their positions is so important. And even if you just say thanks and you think, hey, like they know that they did well, it never hurts to hear that you did something good twice. And it's never a waste of time to celebrate someone. It will always impact their day. It will always make them feel better and worthwhile. Finally, this is very simple, but review tasks at the end. As I was saying earlier, it's very easy for something to slip out. If you say it in the first 10 minutes and your meeting's an hour, it's unlikely that that person's going to fully remember what was said in that first 10-minute span. And so just having either the secretary report back or go individual by individual, what everyone has said that they're going to accomplish and by when at the end of every meeting can allow for just smoother transitions between meetings and to make sure that everyone knows exactly what's going on. Finally, I think it's just really important to be present. Even virtually, people notice if you're physically or mentally present at a meeting or event. I could be sitting here paying attention as the treasurer, but maybe I have my phone right here and you can't really tell that, but you're not participating, you're not actively listening, you're not gonna be able to talk about the event if a member comes up and is like, "Hey, what did you think?" Or like, "That was so nice to see you there." And so it's very important as a leader in this organization or in your executive board meeting to actually spend time with your organization, to think about it, to respect your fellow board members. Um, and so make sure that you're paying attention, make sure that you're showing up to things, and make sure that you're a positive force. You're a leader here, and people are going to be looking up to you no matter the organization. 3, conflict. I'm not going to be diving too far into this because usually if there's conflict in an organization, then it's going to be very specific, but I'll touch on that a little bit at the end. Um, Again, as I mentioned earlier, miscommunication is so much easier now that we're not in person with our executive boards. We're missing those visual cues. It's a lot easier to not be paying attention. Words can just be taken out of context if you're focusing in and out. It's very easy to fade in and out in a Zoom call. Or if you're doing those textual based communications and it's just text, you never know if you're interpreting it the way that the person meant it. And my biggest advice here is just to be proactive. Make sure that you're having those confirmations about what people are getting done or what's supposed to be happening. Make sure that you're confronting issues before they grow from a molehill to a mountain. Um, Miscommunication is going to be the root of most of the conflicts this year if there is a conflict in your executive board. And so being proactive about it and making sure that you're taking steps to avoid the miscommunication is super important. To close this out, I wanted to talk a little bit about the leadership consultants and how we can be an ally to your executive board and how we can be a resource to your executive board. We are a group of student leaders who work with on-campus executive boards and organizations to make the best experience possible for everyone in the organization and on the executive board. So really, as I mentioned earlier, this is where you would come if you have a more specific problem. We've had issues with money come up. We've had interpersonal conflict between executive board members. We've had attendance issues. We've had almost everything that you can imagine. And we are trained specifically to be able to help you and your executive board through any sort of conflict that you find. Um, Other than that, that's all I have for today. You can contact myself or any of the other LCs. We should have um, our office hours up. We are all required to have one office hour a week that you can drop into at any point. You can also contact us if none of those office hours are line up with your schedule, and we can find a time to meet and talk this out, because truly a successful executive board is the key to a successful semester, but also specifically an online semester. So thank you for going on this journey with me. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.